Okay, so we are using this alien isolation prop as our base for our prop model. We're going to be making the geometry from it, but when we actually come to texture it, we can actually texture it however we want to give our own little theme. So don't be tied into actually the original kind of color scheme. We can retexture this. This is a piece of work by Jack Perry for the game Alien Isolation, so give him credits and shout out. Cool, so a vast majority of this is made the same way we've made most of our assets so far. We're using our big five, so we're using extrude, bridge, bevel, merge, and adding edges. That's all we're really going to do for a majority of this. Some of it, like the coil, so like the little coil thing that wraps in from the back of the battery to the monitor, but that's a bit of a special way to do that because we're going to be creating this big long helix and then basically bending it into place. And the only other thing we're going to be doing is using the Boolean to make these small sections here. And then fix them up, obviously, because we don't want to use Booleans and then not fix up the mess it makes. But that's the most complex aspect about the modeling. There is a slightly more, God, all these messages. There is a slightly more complex thing that we've done so far with the frame. So the thing that connects all this whole stuff together. We have to make this. It's a few steps involved, but it's all based around a cube, and it's just a little bit of make sure things line up with each other and make sure everything kind of makes sense. So this is our prop, and yeah, if we want to look at this, we want to really observe, because one thing I'm seeing a lot of people are understanding when we have to talk about it, but when it comes to actually physically doing it, I think people kind of get a bit blind and they forget. We're just going to look at the base primitives of everything so far. So what base primitives can we see? Obviously a cube for the monitor, which has a little bit of a flute at the back, a little bit of a kind of inset where the radiator is. We've got a cylinder for this little spouty thing at the back. Again, depending on how you texture this, this might be something. Obviously in the original one, this is kind of like this is the actual center, I think. We've got another cube for the battery at the back, and then we've got a handle, which is obviously a cylinder. And then there's lots of minor stuff. There's lots of minor like cylinders here. There's some minor cylinders here and here. And these hexagons back here, there's cylinders. Remember, like anything like this, it's technically cylindrical. So even these are cylinders. And what we're going to do in this video is actually take this all the way to pretty much finished, bar a couple of things. Because I want to kind of cover a lot. First, we want to make the screen, we're going to make the frame, we're going to make the handle, we're going to make the battery, including the chamfer and all these edges. And we're going to look at making these little things on the side. Because what we can also do with this is look to see if there's any repeating features. Obviously, the major repeating feature is these 5 little kind of things at the side. But then we've got a lot of, okay, we've got cubes here. We've got some cylinders for this bit. We've got like a bit of a cylinder thing here. So we're going to start off super basic as well. Super basic. Because we want to make sure that we can get the scaling of everything. Make sure the whole thing looks like it's correct relative to itself. That's why I've included the hand reference, so that we can actually see how big the handle is compared to a hand. So making sure that our handle is actually that that big relative to the screen, relative to the frame. Because a lot of this is all that observational stuff that we've learned in 2D, but obviously using it in 3D now. Cool. So I'm just going to move my PureF off screen for a second. I'm going to bring that on every now and then. Gooey. Obviously, new scene. Make the whole Jimmy Jam. So props, I'm going to call this. I got whatever you want, so maybe I'll call it scanner. Okay. And I'm going to save this PureF document into the images folder of that. So let me just find scanner. There you go. So I'm just found the project window. I'm just going to go to images, and I'm just going to save this into the images folder because it's an image-based thing, and there's a folder for images. This is also where we'll be putting our textures if we're going to be using textures in Maya. Let's call it PureF. Okay, awesome. So now wherever I take this scene, everything comes with it. Okay, so number 1, cube for the screen. It's a cube, but as we were saying in class, if you really look, really pay attention. Is it perfectly square, or is it ever so slightly wide? For me, when I'm looking at this, I see this being ever so slightly wide, like a touch wide. So, make a cube. Remember holding shift. So I'm also seeing a lot of people forgetting the basic tools. So at the beginning of this, I'm going to just re-explain some tools, but I really need people to get this in the head. Want to make sure, number one, that create polygon primitives interactive is turned on because that just speeds up the process. And if you hold shift in the middle of the world, you make a big cube. Yeah. Nice big cube. And I just want to make sure that it's in the center of the world in the X and Z here on the in the channel box, which is on the right hand side here. That's just because we want to work nice and evenly in the middle of the scene, and if something's off to one side, you know, it's just a bit hard to, it might make things a bit harder to use at points. Cool. Alright then, so I'm just going to use my scale tool to literally just find out where my front is facing. So this is my front. So I'm going to get the depth of the screen. So I'm really going to pay attention to this reference and kind of see how deep that is. And then the width of the screen at the same time, just using the scale tool. Now obviously we don't have actual schematics for this. So a lot of it is our kind of like, it was our observation. So let's go. In fact, I'm going to bring this down here. I'm going to leave this in the front of the screen so I can always see what I'm looking at. Okay. Good. Maybe a touch deeper. I'm thinking, oh, you've got to have the switch in these boxes and these kind of thing here, so will it fit inside there? So I'm relatively happy with that for now. Again, because we're keeping it so simple, I can change that later on. And then we've got a little radiator at the back. Very simple to make. Just grabbing that back face, extruding. And then I'm not even going to use this. I'm just going to literally go back to my normal tools to keep it simple. So press W, move it back. How deep does this radiator go? And then I use my scale tool just to bring it in slightly. Looking at the angle there, how deep is that angle? Can I move my camera to kind of match that view? And does it look the same? It looks similar. Cool. That's all I need to do. So extrusions and just a bit of scaling. That's all we're doing. Next, what I'm going to do while I'm here is make the screens on the inside. So again, I'm looking at my reference. I'm seeing how deep this is and then how deep it pushes in. And this is all, again, just extrusions. We've done all this before. So extrude. Offset that in a little bit. So, 1 point, to be very precise, maybe I might go 1.5. And then extrude, push it in to the depth. And then extrude again for this, what I think is like a little plastic inset for the screen. And then extrude again. Something like that. Awesome. Screen done. For now. I'm not going to bother doing any bevels until I'm sure that I've got it done. So, okay, so I'm just going to move that up in the y-axis just so I can start bringing other stuff in. So that's my screen. My next thing is I'm going to bring in my handle while I'm here, I guess, switching up a little bit. I'm going to bring my handle. Now, again, we're not just going to use the base cylinder subdivision axis here. So again, in your channel box on the right hand side, in your inputs, you've got the subdivision axis. Does it need to be a 20-sided cylinder? No, it doesn't need to be a 20-sided cylinder. But it's very good form to have that cross section going through the middle. So I think 16 is a good number. Because it's just low enough that it's not too high, but it's just high enough that it looks round. It looks nice and smooth. And again, all I'm doing with this is just using the scale tool to approximate that size and position, because I'm also looking at the height of the whole thing, because I'm going to make this little guard at the top later on, but the height of the whole handle to the bottom of this monitor, I'm kind of like judging that distance. And again, I'm just using the scale tool for this. Nice, simple. So I'll have something like that. And make sure this is also translate X and translate Z in the middle. So far, so good. I'm also from the side going to make sure it's not too far forward or too far back, because Again, you've got to think about how you're going to be holding this all the time. It's got to be comfortable to hold. Okay, for me that's okay. It's looking alright. Again, I'll probably come as we bring more things into the scene and make the object more kind of refined. Things will start to make more sense. You know, things will okay. That needs to be bigger. That needs to be smaller because now I've got something relative to scale it off. Okay, so now I'm going to do the battery. So what is the battery? Battery's just a cube. So make a cube. Oops. And then just again, just move it into place. Use a scale. So what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to snap the bottom of the battery to the bottom of the handle in line with the handle. So I'm going to grab the bottom face, just hold V. So this is something that again we were talking about in class. People are just struggling to kind of grasp the concept of this. If I grab from the middle, I'm using all three axes. So if I then say, oh, I want to align to one of these vertexes down here, if I grab from the middle, it starts going in that direction, which I don't want it to do. I just want it to move down. So if I just move it down but hold V, I basically snap it in line. And I have to drag my mouse to the vertex I want to align it to. I don't drag the manipulator, I drag my arrow. And manipulator just follows it because it's being constrained in the y-axis. So some people really, most of us really need to kind of work on that understanding. So what I'm also looking at is how far to the top of the battery, roughly, this goes. So it's not even like the bottom third, it's like the bottom quarter. So, and then how thick is it? Is there any kind of reference or any kind of like areas I can look at in the reference and say, okay, I can see where it kind of, is it overlapping? Is it coming flush with the back of the screen? So I can also use that. And I think mine's a little bit thin, so I can just scale it out a little bit. I'm going to make it a touch wide to the screen. Because when I bring in the frame later on, the frame doesn't go, you can kind of see in the reference there behind the coil, and in the other reference with the hand you can kind of see there. The frame doesn't come all the way up to the edge of the battery. The battery is actually wider. Cool. So I'm going to do a save at that point. Actually, no, not yet. Actually, I'm going to bring in the last primitive, which is, I've completely forgot it, which is the tube at the back. So I'm going to bring that in. Now with the tube, I said this in class, this is technically an in-game model. It's not a schematic or anything like that. So this does look really low poly. But if this was actually constructed to have these sharp edges, you would have sharp lines in the real world going down. But this is meant to look like a round cylinder. This is just, they've chosen to make it real low poly for some reason, but this is just a cylinder, so we're going to keep it as a cylinder. But one thing that's really kind of interesting is it's pretty much perfectly on the back of the screen, and it's quite hard to eyeball things in a perfect position like that. So I'm actually going to do a little bit of pre-modeling or kind of like setting something up for me for future. So if I come grab my screen, grab my face mode, I'm just going to go to Edit Mesh, down to Poke. What that does, it creates a vertex in the middle, which I can actually use to snap to, just like I did with the thing, the bottom of the battery to the bottom of the handle. I'm going to use this to snap my cylinder to, so it's perfectly in the middle of this. I don't need this, I can take this away later on, but I'm literally using this kind of like a bit of a guideline. Cool. So it's a cylinder, so I'm going to make a cylinder. And in this case, I'm actually going to leave it as 20, because this is just big enough in the scene. It's obviously bigger than the handle in diameter, but it's just big enough in the scene where I'd want it to have a little bit more roundness. So, number one, what I'm going to do is obviously leave it as 20 in this case. I'm just going to move D and V my pivot point to the bottom. So again, this is really vexing people for some reason. D releases the pivot point, V snaps the vertex. So if you combine those together, you can move this up and down, and you can drag your mouse to where you want it to align it to, like that. And then I'm just going to V snap that, vertex snap it to the back, and then rotate around 90 degrees, and then start messing with the scale. Now what I'm not going to worry about as well is, you can see there's kind of like a frame at the very bottom which attaches it to the actual screen. I'm not going to bother with that yet. That's more technical modeling, as well as this end piece. I'm not going to bother doing that yet. I'm just going to get the cylinder. So, like that. Then we get some length. And I can grab all the end vertexes and then just scale it in slightly. Something like that. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. But we want to kind of get good. We want to kind of take our time to make sure we're getting pretty good placements of stuff at the beginning. Cool. Awesome. So I'm going to do a save. It's kind of... Now, if I was doing that at speed, that'd be 5 minutes of work, if that, because all we're doing is bringing in basic primitives. And the most modeling we've done is on the screen just by extruding out the back, extruding in the front for the screens, and poking the face at the back. That's the main modeling stuff we've done. Cool. So that's all our base primitives in. Our model is already kind of taking shape. We can already get an idea of if we've over-modeled or under-modeled anything. Or if we've made kind of our things big or too small. But now what we can do is do the frame. So like in class, what we're going to do is start the frame off with a cube. Because what I'm seeing here in the reference is this piece is a cube, and then I'm basically going to use that same cube or that same shape to make other parts of the mesh. Because what I want to do is maintain the height and the depth of these objects, so they're not wide, like too wide on one section, too thin on another, and also the depth of the piece of material isn't too dense or whatever. So make a cube, put the pivot point at the bottom. So again, DV, drag it down to the bottom, and I'm just going to snap it to the top of the cylinder. So make sure I move my camera into a position where I can see what we call a pole. So here you'll see this at the top of cylinders and spheres. This is called a pole. Snap it there, and then all I'm doing here is just using the scale tool to get that in. So get my width, and again I'm looking to see how wide and how deep this is. So does the monitor overhang the frame, or does the frame overhang the monitor? Which sticks out? And is there any clear indication of where it ends at the back? Does it align perfectly to the back of the radiator? Or does it slightly overlap? Or does it slightly kind of stop before the radiator? So I'm going to make this from the front a touch wider than the monitor, just a slight bit. Okay, maybe smidge, and then I'll just shift it back slightly. Maybe something like that. Yeah. Again, a lot of this stuff I can change later on. Okay, so I've got that in there. That's all good. Now here's where it gets a little bit technical, quote unquote technical. It's just basically a bit of advanced kind of, or not advanced, intermediate modeling kind of theory. I've made this panel here, this bottom panel, panel 1. Everything else, this bottom panel here, this side panel here that has dials, the panel at the back which attaches to the battery, they're all the same depth, and they're all the same they're all the same like width and diameter. Because if you think about how this would have been constructed, it's probably made out of one piece of metal that's been kind of like bent into place using kind of like some kind of production method. So what I want to do is make sure I maintain that width, and how I'm going to do that is by literally just duplicating this piece. So what I'm going to do is, number 1, I'm going to DV this into the bottom right corner like this. Sorry, bottom left corner. And then I'm just going to duplicate, Control D. You'll see the update in your outliner, and just make sure you press Control D once to duplicate. Just like in Photoshop, Control D to duplicate, just like in Substance, Control D to duplicate. I'm going to rotate that 90 degrees, like that. Nice. So I'm not going to bring it all the way flush up to the side, because for me, it looks like there is a tiny bit of a gap. But if I want to kind of bring this a bit closer, I can just nudge it a bit closer. Like that. And then I'm just going to, for now, just bring this top face up to about where I can see it turn into this kind of like this tall section here. I can also make a decision about the width. So I've done this, and I'm seeing that, oh, actually, you know what? Looking at the reference and looking at mine, I feel like the panel becomes too far back. It's covering up the section where the radiator begins too much. So I'm just going to grab this for now and move it forward. Like that. And obviously I've offset that. I've kind of changed that to this piece down here. But that's fine, because what could we do to make sure that this piece down here now aligns to this piece here? We've done this a million times so far. I'm just going to grab this face, I'm just going to hold V and snap it in line. That's all we do. Super, super simple. Now I'm going to, unlike what I did in class, I'm actually going to make the bits at the top and down here near the end in a special way to make sure that everything is perfectly the same size. Because again, I want to have I want to maintain like structural consistency, as in like you would have in a design production environment. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is create the connection between this top vertical section and this bottom horizontal section. Again, very, very easy. This is all done in edge mode. And what I'm going to do is grab this tall piece first, the vertical piece. Look underneath, grab the inside edge. It doesn't matter that they're overlapping. Don't worry about that. And then I'm going to just drag it up, hold V, drag it up, so that it aligns to one of the top vertexes. Like that. Again, don't worry that it overlaps. And then I'm going to take away that inside face. Because obviously I'm going to combine and merge this section, so I do not want that inside face. I want to get rid of it. And then we can get rid of this inside face as well. So get rid of you. And then do the same thing. What I'm going to do is snap this one here. And I'll just need to grab the top one and snap it backwards like that. What I'm doing is just moving it in the x-axis and snapping it to one of the vertexes that I want to align it to. There we go, so that's done. Boom. Perfect. Now I'm going to keep everything as a separate piece for now, because I'm going to build everything else. So number one, what I want to do is start setting up the frame for the back, as well as the frame for the bottom, this plate section. So in my mind's eye, I'm thinking, okay, what I really need to do at first is set up the width of that piece of material, because obviously this piece here is a bit wider. If you look at the back little plate section here and this section here, this from this edge here to this edge here is the thickness of this plate at the back. So you can imagine that running up and adjoining to this piece here. So I'm going to get that width using the connect tool. So I'm just going to grab those faces there. Mesh tools connect. So not edit mesh, mesh tools connect. And I'm going to add 2. Because I'm just setting up, with this I'm going to set up the face on the inside to extrude back and stuff. Now you see these are coming in at a bit of a wonky angle, because obviously we've got a 45-degree angle here and a 90-degree angle here. So I'm going to just complete that to bring them in. If I double click an edge, I'd also make sure, I've seen this with a few people, make sure you're going all the way around. You do not want to just grab the 2 top edges there, because then you'll only get the edges on top and you'll get end guns everywhere else. So please make sure you go all the way around. I've seen a few people do that. So what I'm going to do is grab one of these, double click it to grab it, R for scale, and I'm just going to scale that into the center, because that straightens it. And I'm going to do that a few times until it stops moving, that x-axis. And I'll do the same thing here, because what's happening if I overextend it? You've got your scale tool in the middle here, and you've got stuff that's positive and minus that scale. In this case, the x-axis. So if you just keep bringing that to 0, you basically bring in both sides together. So I'll do that again until it stops moving. I can grab both sides, scale out, and what I'm doing here is starting to get the width of this plate here, minus this little bit at the end, the width of this plate. So I can eyeball that in. Something like that. Cool. Now with that done, I'm just going to do a quick save. With that done, I'm going to just Control D, duplicate that, and move it down below my handle, because I'm setting up the bottom part of this now. And I'm just going to put my pivot point at the top edge here, or maybe here, just one of these top vertexes, and then V-snap that to the bottom of the handle, like that. And then I'm just going to delete the faces on the left and right, so like that. Then we should have something like that. Cool. Now before we move on, what I'm going to do is fill these holes that I've just made. So if I go to edge mode, I can, so edge mode, grab the top edge, the bottom edge, and then bridge. which is just to the right of extrude. Then do the other side. Bridge. Yeah, we go. No settings or anything like that. Everything's good. Cool. Everything's looking so far so good. Now here's a little bit of more of that kind of like intermediate modeling kind of theory. I'm going to do basically the same thing I did here to make the back panel here. But I've just got to make sure that I'm setting it up so that I can join it to the top section and join it to the bottom section, as well as having a little kind of plate at the back underneath here that supports the battery. So what I'm going to do is pivot point this to one of the top right corners, one of the top corners here. Duplicate that and then just make sure it snaps to the back of the battery and then rotate 90 degrees like that. So again, pretty much the same thing we did here. And then I'm going to grab the top faces and I'm going to V-snap that to the bottom there. So I'm snapping the top of this to the bottom of this plate, and I'm snapping the bottom of this to snap to the top of this plate, essentially. And while I'm here, I'm just going to take the top face away and the bottom face away, because these will need to get deleted anyway eventually, so make sure you take those away. So let's do the top bit first. So we made this shape here, and this is the width of this shape here. If we've not done any weird rotation or anything, everything should line up. The only numbers I should have in rotation here is 90 degrees in one of these. Okay, so then I just need to do is grab the back face, just the back face, extrude it backwards, and just snap it to that, like thus. So again, just using V-snap, that's all it is. Delete that, and then do the same thing as I did before. I'm going to grab that top edge, snap it to that corner, in line with that corner there, so we get the 45 degree. Grab this edge here, and then snap that upwards to make that done. There. Now down here is a little bit different because we're not going to make a right angle. We're going to make a plate that basically goes underneath to the back of the battery. So, and it's just a bunch of extrusions. That's all it is. So I'm grabbing that face at the back. I'm extruding, and I'm just snapping that to there. Because what I want to do as well is I want to set up a small face here so that I can combine and merge. I am not, underline it not, just dragging this all the way back here. I'm not doing that. So drag it to there. Then do another extrusion, drag it to there. Then do my last extrusion, where I just basically drag it to where I feel it should be. There you go. I feel like where it should be on this, so somewhere like there. And the only other thing I've got to do on this is just in face mode, grab the inside face here, which is just on the inside here, and delete that. Because again, I do not want a face on the inside of this. Now with all that done, all we should need to do is select all our pieces in object mode, and then combine, and then merge. Done. Awesome. And now here I can make some decisions. Is the width of this too wide? If I feel that this is too wide here, I can just go to like vertex mode and just grab all this line of vertexes. Because I want to grab the whole thing in line, and then I can push it forward or back. So, and then same thing here. Is this a little bit too far forward? Now I'm looking at my reference, and the distance from like the front of the plate to the handle is actually pretty short. So I'm going to pull that back slightly like that. Maybe a little bit more. And maybe even push my handle forward slightly. So then, big decisions are being made. What else do I need to change? Right, while I'm here, okay, let's look at some sizes. Let's look at the distance between the bottom of the frame here to the bottom of the TV here. That's a massive distance that I've got in mind. So obviously, I'm wrong here. I'm wrong. So what do? Is my handle looking the right size? My handle's actually looking pretty good. So what I'm actually going to do is lower my TV at this point. So I'm going to grab both of these. I'm going to lower this, which will need me to then lower this top face and then lower this face at the top here. And then kind of reassess how that looks. Now that looks a little bit better. Shorter distance here, you know, a gap between my frame and my TV's not quite as big. What else am I missing? Is there anything else, like subtle things I'm missing? Okay, I'm missing the fact that this side of the frame is coming out slightly further than the TV. What's actually happened from a construction point of view is where we've got the frame here kind of protruding out to get the thickness of this vertical piece, we've got the same protrudence here, it just doesn't turn into a vertical piece. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to be too precise about this, I'm just going to eyeball this in, I'm just going to drag it out a little bit. Like that. So then you can look around and basically say, right, how is this looking? Am I happy with this? I'm actually happy with this. It's looking nice. So that's why working like a really basic meshes is super, super important. Okay, so now let's do a little bit more kind of semi-complex intermediate modeling. What I'm going to do is first of all make this shape minus the Boolean. I'm going to first of all make this kind of triangle shape and then duplicate that over and then bring it to the very bottom here. So I'm only making one of them, but what I'm doing there is I'm maintaining its kind of shape. So I'm not just eyeballing that in. You can eyeball this in if you want to, but it will mean that it's not the right shape on this top section and this bottom section. So what I'm going to do is just extrude this up again. Again, try and judge the height of this, move my camera into the right position. Use my scale to just scale it inwards like this. Don't need to change anything. So again, I'm just looking and making adjustments. That's looking good. Now here's a clever bit. I'm going to do a duplicate, but I'm not going to Control D. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is grab in face mode all that top section there. Go to edit mesh, and then down to duplicate. What this does is basically whatever you've got selected here, pardon me, whatever you've got selected here, it's going to duplicate it into its own mesh. So now if I just click this in object mode, I'll have my own mesh. My pivot point is in the middle of the world, so I will need to first of all center pivot. And then I'm going to put my pivot point in one of the bottom corners. Now, if you need to pause and go back to watch what I just did, do it. Don't just kind of let yourself go past this point. You know, pause the video, go back, watch what I did. Even slow down the video, you know, slow it down. But I'm going to carry on now. So, yeah, just DV this into one of the corners, like that. And then I'm just going to drag this down to the bottom. The width is perfect because of how I moved all this back kind of edge together. And all I need to do is just take away that inside face there of this piece and then rotate this in to place and then combine and merge. Combine, merge. There you go. So if I press 3, I should be looking at something like this. So if you see me do this kind of stuff, I'm just checking for faults. What I'm checking for is any hard edges. So if I have accidentally done something that might not be very obvious. Come here. You know, I might get something like this isn't how that edge is meant to look. That edge is wrong. So something's happened here. You know, I'm meant to have something which is like this. And again, you'll get used to, if you do this as check, because I do this kind of like debugging to check the mesh. If you do this, you'll get used to kind of seeing what it looks like. But that's the frame, and I'm happy with that. I can make some adjustments, so I can make calls of like, okay, then how does the thing at the back actually look like? I can go in there and kind of model that a little bit more technically. Yeah, I could go back and make some adjustments if I want to, but so far I'm happy. I'm going to do a save, because this is where we start getting a little bit more technical. So what I'm going to do first of all, I'm going to start my first round of beveling, and then I'm going to do some Boolean, and then I'm going to make the handle, and then we're going to kind of go around and kind of start adding a little bit more detail, because this is the point where all my basic stuff is in. You know, how does the whole object look on its own? Is it looking okay? Is it looking weird? Does it need some more work? So, but yes, I'm going to do some beveling on my frame first of all. Now, I'm not just going to select every edge and bevel. I'm going to go around and select specific edges and bevel them all as one group, and then I'll do another bevel in other specific areas. So this is where I've got to look at the edge in my reference, and like we've talked about in class, everything that you want to have like a like a good model in that's going to be in the audience's face a lot. You want to stay away from like really hard edges. So beveling edges is important, but then you don't want to over bevel, like make them too big or add too many segments. But you do want to kind of pay attention to, if you've got like metal that's been bent at 90 degrees like this, it's gonna look a certain way. The bevels are going to be a certain size. It's not going to be polished, sharp edge, right, like 90 degrees. So what I'm going to do is go around and first of all select all the edges going around. This is going to take a little bit of time, so make sure you're nice and comfortable. Make sure you're saved, and I'm just going to go around and select all these edges first of all. Now these are all my border edges. I'm not doing any or many internal edges. Like all these right angles, I'm going to do another bevel on. But I'm doing all my border edges first, all my big shapes. Again, just carefully going around, selecting the edges that I want. So I'm not selecting these internal ones here. I'm not selecting these internal ones here connected to the kind of these little things that pop out. Oh, I'm going to do these ones though. I'm not doing these ones in the inside and then mimicking that up there. Because I'm going to do different bevels on those. Okay, so some stuff has been over-selected, so I need to make sure I deselect that. For some reason, it's selecting stuff I don't want to select. Right there. I don't want to select you, do I? So make sure I'm only grabbing what I want. Do a bevel. Now, when I'm doing the bevel as well, I'm going to be moving around and checking. See if I've missed anything, like I've missed an edge right there. Boom. So bevel going all the way around. Is anything acting weird? I shouldn't be creating any n-gons by doing all these border edges. I can't see anything. Everything is beveling where it should be and not beveling where it shouldn't be. Okay, so now I can get the fraction. So, okay, 0.1, and then I'm going to add 2 segments like that. Now for me, that's real nice. What if I do, so I'm going to go step back a little bit. What if I do just one segment? No, yeah, 2 segments. Yeah, 2 segments. There we go. So that's just a little bit. Actually, no, I'm second guessing myself now. So should that actually be not 0.1? Should be 0.15 or 0.125 with 1 segment added. That's better. Okay, because I'm looking at my reference and I'm doing this. Cool. That's all right. Now what I'm going to do is bevel some other edges. So I'm going to bevel. This is going to be a weird one for you. I'm going to bevel this edge here, but not this internal edge here. Because if I'm looking at my reference, you can see that's pretty much a right angle. And then this is slightly curved. So instead of doing the entire thing like that, which will give me something like that, which I don't want, what I'm going to do is take this up to the small edges here. So from this small edge here, round to this small edge here. If I bevel like that, it's going to give me some n-gons, but again, we can make them, but we have to fix them. And all I got to do with the fractions is just fix that, because that's a little bit too big. That's better, because I'm looking at this corner here. So for me, that's very nice. And because I beveled up to a certain point but no further, it has given me an end-on here, 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 and here. Right there. But that's fine, because all I've got to do is go to vertex mode, make sure I've not got anything selected, go to target world, and just drag this to the corner. Drag this to the corner. Fixed. And I've got some nice bevels there. Okay, where else do I need them? Where else should I have them? Okay, so do you see? So there's a slight one on the inside here. Now with this one, I'm going to be very, very cheeky, and I'm only going to do these 3. And I'll bevel that as big as I can. Like that, just with one segment. Now all I'm doing there, pardon me, all I'm doing there is just softening off that kind of sharp angle right there. And to avoid end-guns, if I go all the way up here to here, I'm going to create an end-gun in like 3 places. But if I only need to make this very small anyway, even that's like, it's like, if I only need to make this small, then that's making my life hard with all these massive end-guns. So in this case, knowing what I know, and knowing that if I bevel up to here, then the bevel's only going to go as far as this vertex here. Then I'm just going to bevel, make it nice and big, and just make sure I merge it, and there you go, nice little. Because again, all that's doing is just taking away that sharpness from that edge, softening off a little bit. Because again, I'm thinking this is a portfolio piece, so I'm going to be thinking, right, where can I make stuff look really, really nice? Without going overboard. Again, I always want to make sure I'm not going super, super crazy with stuff. And the last ones, I'm just going to do the exact same thing in these 2 corners here. Oh, last few, because I've not done that one over there, have I? So again, that and there, and other side. These 3, 1, 2, 3. That. And then merge. Because again, that just gives you a slight little bit of a bend, just enough to communicate some nice softness. Again, with this one, I'm going to take this up to the corner here. So this corner here is exactly what I did over here. So from there, all the way to there. Bevel. Now I should have really paid attention to what number I put there. That's about right. Yeah, I really should have paid attention to that then. There you go. And then just do the tiger weld thing again. And my last one, before I might do a couple of very, very minor ones, but my last major one is I'm just going to do this whole entire kind of section there, wrapping around, just because this is a little bit smoother. Could I get away with doing the exact thing I was doing before? Could I just do this? Was I overthinking it then? Could I just do that? Add a segment in. I don't even need to add a segment in. Yeah, there you go. Could just perfect. Yeah, just again, just taking away that sharpness. And then merge again. So again, I'm just checking. That's good. What about back there? Now back here looks pretty sharp, but what I'm going to do is also do a bevel, do the same kind of bevel on this one. So I'm doing only 3 edges. Because if we actually look at what's going on here, when I bevel this and I increase the fraction ends when it hits this piece here. So I'm using that small area as almost like a throttle. Because again, if I go any further than that in my selections before I bevel, I'm going to be making end-guns. And I have to fix all the end-guns. It's a pain. Do I add one in? Yeah, I'll add one in. Going across. This is also why I didn't do this in class, because this can be a little bit of a not time consuming, but obviously if we're focusing more on other bits, this can take a bit of time. Cool, there you go. Okay, so we're 45 minutes into the video, and again, I'm going at kind of like a slowish pace to make sure people are able to pause the video, take notes, understand what I'm doing. Again, 20 minutes. This could be 20 minutes of work once you understand what you're doing. And I'm going to call one more bevel right there. And then I think I might call this. Okay. And then if you were to mesh display, soften edge. So if I soften the entire edge, I should get a pretty nice kind of layout there. Ooh, I will do this inside edge here as well. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, now if I soften this edge, there we go. Alright, that's better. So that's looking nice. So yeah, I did this before I did the Boolean, because if I did the Boolean first, because I had to kind of obviously fix the n-gons that appear once I've done the Boolean, it makes this whole kind of beveling process a lot harder to do. Some of the bevels won't even kind of look like they're working because you're dealing with very kind of tight areas of lots of vertexes. So if I do that first, it makes my life a whole lot easier. Cool. Now I'm also going to be very, very precise with this when I do a Boolean, because now it's Boolean time, so let's do a save. I'm going to poke one of these faces at the front there. So I'm going to go to mesh, edit mesh, poke, like that. And I'm going to do the same thing on this face here, poke. Because I'm going to use this as a guide to put my hole. In fact, because it's, do I bother doing that? No, I'll not bother doing that. Oops, it is. I have removed my images from PureRef. So let me just get my images back. Okay, images back. So yeah, second guess myself there. I thought if I put a poke in the middle, the point would be in a better position, but it wasn't. And I don't want to go into that, like getting that to be absolutely perfect. Pardon me again. Where I want it to be is going a little bit too kind of like finicky, like advanced technical modeling kind of stuff. And again, I want people to kind of flow through this a little bit freer at first. You know, don't get bogged down by so many of the rules or so many ways of doing something. So I've done a save. I've made sure I've gone to mesh display, soften edge on this, because I could soften the entire thing, and because of those bevels, it's still going to give me those nice sharp edges, which it does, and it's super nice. Lovely. Right, so now what do? I need to make a cylinder. So let's have a look at how big this cylinder is compared to, oh, this hole compared to everything else. It's really, really small. So again, we don't need a 20-sided cylinder. Also, think about this. We're going to be booleaning it out this shape, and you've got 4 sides to this shape. But if you've got 20 sides, you've got a really dense mesh being taken out of a really low-res mesh. So the disparity between those two is really bad and a bit hard to deal with. So for me, I think 12 is good for this, because it's one of those numbers that will give you a cross in the middle. Across the middle, because then I've got like this top quarter here can go into one corner, this top quarter here can go into one corner, this bottom quarter here can go into one corner, bottom quarter here can go into one corner. And it's big enough and dense enough to communicate the shape that we want. So what I'm going to do is just rotate it, oops, it is. Just rotate it into place. So again, 90 degrees. I'm just going to make them long like this, because I just need to make sure that it's encompassing the entire section there. And I'm going to just eyeball this in, to be honest. Again, for speed. What I could do is start putting like edges down the middle or something, then edges around the end, take that and then delete them later on. I'm not going to bother doing that. So I'm going to just position this. Now I am looking, it's fairly close to the top of the frame here, but it's not particularly that big, so I'm going to just scale it down a little bit. Again, really pay attention to the diameter of this. So it's like that. Let's make that our thing. I'm going to duplicate this and then just move it down and then rotate it around, because this should now, because what I did before with these little like where the holes are on the actual piece, because I did those as like a duplicate, they should be perfectly in line with each other. So if I just duplicate it and move it down, then at least this will be in the right kind of vertical position. Something like that. Okay. Now, number one, what I saw a lot of people doing is they're not combining these two things together. To make it easier on us, we just need two objects. One that is our main shape, and then the other one, which is two selection groups. One that is our main shape, and one that is our thing we're actually extracting. Now, this should be one solid piece already, because obviously we went through and did the booleaning and beveling, and we wouldn't be able to do that if it was multiple different pieces. So this should all be combined and merged. And then all I'm doing for these two pieces is just grabbing them and then combining them. Do a quick save. So, booleaning. Number one, select your main piece, the thing that is going to get affected, and then shift select the thing that is affecting it, in this case the cylinders. And then I just want to go to mesh, boolean, difference AB. Now if you've got it selected the opposite way around, so if you've done the dowels first and the frame second, you go difference BA. So booleans, difference, AB, bang. There we go. Now, what I want you to do as well is not start control-Zing in this section, because this is basically previewing the boolean, and I can still technically go in there and kind of move it around. But if I start control-Zing stuff and start messing with stuff, Maya can kind of throw a fit at the minute. They've not made this super solid. Just a little bit touchy at the minute. But all we need to do is make sure we position them in the right position. Because if we've got this boolean and we're happy with it, all we need to do is go to edit, delete all by type, history, boom. And then it basically completes the tool. Because a lot of stuff to do in Maya when you're doing more kind of complex things like that is Maya needs history to make it work. And kind of to maintain the process. So that's why I could actually, move stuff around and it can like live update. Because the history was driving it. But if I delete the history, it basically says, okay, that tool's complete. Now this is the easy bit. What I gotta do is just go around and use the multi-cut tool and just start getting triangles into the corner. So multi-cut into the corner. Right, so again, don't freak out if this happens. This is just Maya for some reason losing the connection to its material. It does this sometimes when you do booleans or bridges or whatever. So how do we fix that? Very simple. Hold right click. Go down to assign existing materials and go to Lambert 1. Lambert 1 is like the base material for everything. This is the grey material everything gets applied with. And we're fixed. So we go back. And that might happen a couple of times, but that's all that's happening is Maya's just been a bit thick. Okay, so I'm going to go there. So in this case, I'm going to go 3 triangles and leave this as a quad. I'm going to go from here. And notice as well, I'm not trying to... This is me personally. I don't click these vertexes because I'm really bad at aiming. So what I do is I click and drag on the edge into the vertex I want to start from, and then click and drag on the edge to the vertex I want to go to. For me, that's a lot more controllable, and I can be a bit faster like that because I'm a bit rubbish when it comes to aiming, that kind of stuff. And as you can see, I can do multiples at the same time. So all you've got to do is learn the pattern on how to build these triangles, and you build a bunch in like one go. And I'm going to delete this edge because I'm going to mimic this. I'm going to keep this nice and symmetrical, but as you can see, like this middle edge here on this side, on the left-hand side, is going down to the bottom left corner. With this one, it's going up to the top right corner. So I am just going to carefully delete that edge. Just hitting delete. And I'm going to rebuild that edge back into the bottom right. So I'm mimicking what's happening on the left here. I like things being symmetrical. And then I can go in and rebuild this. Like that. Perfect. So I want to go do now is go around to the other ones and do the same thing. So it's all the same things, doing the same thing over and over again. So I'm going to build a majority of these in and then delete edges that I don't kind of need. I know I say don't delete edges if you don't need to. In this case, I'm going to delete some to mimic what's going on here because we've got this quad here. And this is currently a triangle because of this edge, so I'm just going to take that away. Like that, so then we've got them quads back. But like, you know, keeping symmetry and stuff. If you don't do that, that's fine. This is just me being me as a modeler. And I'll come down to the bottom. So I've not got a, oh no, there's one. I'm just about to talk about this. You might have this when you do your Boolean. So this edge right here isn't coming to the center edge here. It's coming one over, so it's actually crossing the center line, which is not great. But what I don't want to do is delete this, like right now, because Maya might not have the knowledge to maintain this polygon, and everything will get very, very difficult to do. So top and bottom are fine. Sorry, the bottom's fine. The top is a little bit wonky. So what I'm going to do is just build these edges for now. Just like I've done before. Like that. Now for this one, I'm going to just, so again, pause the video if you need to kind of make notes on this one. But all I'm doing is just getting my multi-cut tool. So we should already be in it already. And I'm just adding a single edge on that. So I'm adding a single edge, completing that, and I should have a vertex right there. And all I'm going to do is just target weld that to the middle there. So basically I'm forcing that line to go from that edge to that edge by just moving the vertex to there. And then go through and rebuild. And again, this shouldn't take long at all. This should be a pretty quick process. So just paying attention to how I've laid that out. I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. Oops, it is. I've messed that one up completely. And we are done. So retopoed. Well, no, not retopoed. Rebuilt those booleans, so now it's nice and strong. Last thing to do with these is just go around and do some beveling around the edge. So make sure I grab both of those, top and bottom. So I can do the same ratios and stuff on each of these. We've got everything selected. Nope. So yeah, make sure I got all around each one of them like that. Boolean, not Boolean, sorry, bevel, keep calling it Boolean. 0, 1, 0, 5, 6, 7, 5, with 1. Yeah, that's about right. Because again, I'm looking at this, and obviously it's not everywhere you can see here, it's a little bit beveled. And for me, that's good. And again, I can hit that with a smooth, soften edges. There we go. That should read really nicely. Cool.
if we bring everything else back, nice. So we're still able to kind of move and shift stuff around because, you know, if I say that this is too low down, I can still just grab this bottom section and move it up and down. If I feel that, I mean, this is a bit harder with the circles now that I've done the booleans, but if for whatever reason I want to grab all this line here and move it backwards and forwards, I can do. But we can still adjust stuff as we go along. So what I'm also going to do is pause the video now and go around and just do a little bit of beveling for other stuff and then come back and show you what I've done. Because again, it's just all doing the exact same thing I've just done, but over multiple things. And then we're going to talk about making the handle and then starting thinking about making the battery. Okay. Okay, so I've just re-recorded this bit. Like I said in the video, or will say in the video, this whole section I recorded in the video, but my audio had decided to stop working, so I needed to. So yeah, loads of explanations missed. So I've just isolated off the unit I'm looking at, and there's only 3 major things that are happening with this. The big major one is the actual screen itself. Before I did any beveling, I went and just selected it in face mode, and then I extracted it. So extract is just to the right of combine, because I'm eventually going to be using this plane to make my screen. And if we take a look at our reference, our screen is ever slightly curved. It's a very kind of like lo-fi sci-fi thing. This is like a glass screen. So you know, a lot of old TVs had glass screens, were slightly curved. So I'm going to do that, but I don't want to have this connected to the geometry and then have to deal with all the edges flying all over the place. So in this case, I'm making my screen as a separate object. So that's my first major thing. Okay, second major thing is I didn't do everything all at once. I didn't bevel everything or whatever. I beveled in kind of segments because I'm looking at my reference and I'm seeing that there's 2 different types of base material. So I'm seeing there's obviously metal for the screen and the radiator, but then I'm also seeing this. In my mind, I see that as a bit of a plastic. And in my mind, plastic has a slightly softer bevel, where obviously metal has a stronger, sharper bevel. However, the back radiator here looks to be softer, almost like it's a softer piece of metal, like a machine stamped kind of thing. So what I did, number 1, was the edge which I had going round. Oh, I've got bevels in here. I didn't mean to. I didn't have. Yeah, this edge going around which separated off the main screen to the radiator. I beveled that and then made it relatively thin, enough that I've got a nice little bit of 3D silhouette change there. And instead of a single segment in the middle, that I just used a scale tool. I went around and made sure I had all the middle segment selected, and then scaled in so I've got that little kind of V shape. Now from there, I basically went and beveled in sections. So I started off with the back, and what I did was basically select all the corner pieces, as well as these kind of pieces here. But I didn't select inside this crevice here. I didn't select inside here. I just selected up to the edge. Because then when I beveled, you start creating an n-gon inside this small area here. But it means that this bevel isn't kind of then transitioning into another area. Because I'm going to do a similar thing over here, which then I don't want to have that bevel transition into this area. So I beveled up to a point, and then when I beveled this, it basically only went a certain distance. So I beveled that, 1 segment in between, made it a relatively, compared to everything else, a relatively big bevel, because again, I'm thinking that this is like a softer metal. And then I came to the inside using target weld, and I just dragged, make sure in edge mode. All I did was with the n-gon that I had here, which if I try and I'll try and remake the n-gon by hand. It's something like this essentially, because my bevel only went up to a certain point. So when my selection only went up to a certain point. So when I beveled it, it starts to create its n-gon. And how I fixed that was literally just like I said, target weld this into the corner, and I go around and do that for every one of the edges. And I did the same for the front piece here, this whole front section. But obviously I've got more edges, so obviously I got all the edges going around in this side, and then I've got the corners going around there. And then I've got here, I only took this into the inside of the screen here. Because I beveled that, again it created an n-gon here, which looked something like this. It created like an N-gun that looked like this. So I went around and did that to all my screens, and I did all that like this front screen section is like one big bevel because all the shapes are fairly consistent. There's not really like small bevel, big bevel, soft bevel, sharp bevel. They're all fairly consistent. And then I did the interior, the plastic section, because again I'm thinking that as a plastic. I'm thinking okay, it's gonna have a softer bevel, and also we've got these. If you look in the corners, we've got almost like a 45-degree angle here. I'm seeing this as a flat angle rather than a smooth angle. And I also think it kind of gives a bit of like a sci-fi feel. And when I did this bevel first going round. I did that one first because I knew that I wanted that to be a different like fraction, and I wanted different segments in between. So I did this one first, and then I did the corners. And I just did that as a slightly larger fraction with no segments. And that bevel came out looking like something like this. So together, these two bevels looked like. Oops, it is. There you go. Oops. Like this. So the bevel coming in from the main screen, because I only took it to this edge here, created an N-gun here. And because I only beveled this corner here, this then created an N-gun here. But how I fix this, and again, in every one of the corners, is again multi-cut, not multi-cut at all, target weld. I first of all target welded this little small geezer into the corner again. And then I took this vertex from this one, and I took it into the corner as well, like that. And then, using the multi-cut, I just took an edge from there, went to there, took an edge from there, went to there, thus fixing the N-gun if I was to go around and do that every side. Now for me as well, I also took away one of these triangle edges to bring us back a quad. Not for any reason, just for like aesthetic. I like the way that functionally this looks. This looks a lot cleaner. So as you can see, if I go around, I've got the same thing happening. And that's all I did with them N-guns. So with the corner here, I didn't take it all the way into the edge here, because if I was to bevel this all the way up to this edge, it'll start going into this area, and obviously I don't want that. So I beveled it up to this edge, and then fixed the N-gun here. Did the same thing on the other part, and then just kind of target welded it into this point, which is fine. And then yeah, for the main screen, a lot of these bevels were just done all at the same time because they've all got the same kind of ratio, like the same sharpness. But then I'm thinking about this internal shape here, and that's the plastic. So I'm thinking a softer bevel going around the radius. But then the corners, I'm also seeing it as like a bit of a right angle. So I'm beveling it, but I'm only beveling to get that right angle shape, that diagonal shape, and then fixing up the N-guns that it give me. So there's one that I think I made for demonstration. I can just put that back in there. There you go. So target weld is your best mate. It does a lot of stuff for us. And for that, for now, that's everything I need to do. Obviously, the screen is still a separate mesh that I'm going to deal with. But there's nothing else I need to do. Now, I have seen a couple of these done by people who they've actually put like a little carry handle at the top, which is pretty sick. Now, that's not on our reference here, and obviously we want to follow what's on our reference geometrically. And obviously, I've already gone through how to make these. This is literally just a little bit of a, oops, I've stopped recording my audio. Here's a little bit of a piece together. So yeah, kind of a long video there, but because I'm taking my time going through, that's all. That's the only point. So if we can get up to this phase, this stage, the next stages are really easy. And if you don't get up to this stage, as long as you get up to this basic geometric stage, you've got the frame in, you've got the handle in, you've got the screen in. Even if you've not got these little bits and stuff, that's fine. Because none of this stuff really relies on anything else. You know, we can work on the battery independently. We can work on the sensor independently. We can work on these bits independently. Because nothing's actually physically attached. It's great. Cool. Right then. That is the video ended.
Okay then, so my audio had not recorded about 10 minutes of that. So what you've just heard then is a voiceover, so it might not necessarily be following it
as precise as if I was actually doing it by hand. But yeah, I had to do a voiceover for that last little bit, the last 10 minutes. Bit of a pain that the audio decided to not work on that bit. I had to go back and kind of do a rejig of my recording software, which is awesome. Well, that's fine. So yeah, that whole process. So I put an edge at the very top there. So just like with the oil drum, I could extrude out this top ring, but obviously we're going a lot further out than the oil ring. Paying attention to how far it came out relative to what's on my reference. And then you could leave it like that. Now what I chose to do is go around and select all the faces going around at the top. Like that. And then use a smooth, which is not a common tool. It's not one of my big 5 tools. I sometimes use it. Smooth tool. That's basically subdivides all the faces. So if I show you on a basic plane, if I subdivide this face, okay, I keep calling it subdivide. It's smooth. Subdivide is an old term for it. If I subdivide this, if I smooth it, it breaks the face up into 4, horizontally and vertically. So what that does, it gives me obviously a horizontal edge, which I deleted as we saw, Control Backspace deleted, and then it gave me all these vertical faces. So it basically doubled the amount of vertical faces, which give me n-gons at the top and the bottom. So I'm flustered because I've lost all that bloody audio. But at the very, very top, you saw all I need to do is take away those faces at the top, and then do the good old delete and then extrude and merge center, just like we did for the very top of the column at the beginning. So I actually do that bit. So make sure I'm not getting selected. So yeah, we'll delete all those top and then just extrude and then merge center. Now underneath it's a bit different because you've got twice the amount of faces going into half the amount of faces here. So all I did was go around and basically find my front, made a triangle using the multi-cut, and then basically go around and do that all the way around. And then I can sharpen that edge. Going around now. And that should give us some lovely sharp edges. Lovely. So, let's make sure my audio, I'm paranoid about my audio now. Right, my audio's still recording. What I'm going to do now is add the little bits in the handle, these little bits. So I've done this reverse of what I did in class, but you can do either way, to be honest. Both ways are perfectly fine. Yeah, so all I'm going to do is count the amount of little things there are. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. Okay, so I'm in edge mode. I'm just going to select the middle edges there, just like we did with the crates and stuff. I'm going to go to Mesh Tools Connect. I'm going to move that to 5. And I click OK. Now with these still selected, I'm going to come and bevel them. And I'm going to bring these closer together. So I think mine was like 1.5. Yeah, 1.5 for me is, or 0.15 is a nice number. I'm going to add a single segment in the middle. Not 2 segments, you fool. And grab each one of those in the center. And then just use the scale tool. I'm not going to scale in for the middle because that's going to use the y-axis as well. And it brings everything, either if I pull out, it'll do that. If I pull in, it'll do that. I'm going to use a square because the square basically ignores that y-axis. Or I can hold control and do this because then it does the same thing. So this will not ignore the y-axis. I'm going to just bring that in slightly. Just like that. You can bring it in further if you want. Then I'm going to handle. Boom. Now I've not gone around and done any optimization yet. To be honest, there doesn't need to be a lot of it on this. There's like on the bottom of this handle and the back of the spout, that's about the only 2 I need to worry about. The rest of them I don't need to worry about. So far so good. So we can have a look, see how it looks. It looks good. So I'm coming to the end of this because we're up to, I think we're up to like nearly an hour and a half, maybe bordering on 2 hours now. But we've not moved far from where we got in class. Obviously, we made the handle in class, we made the frame. But all I did before I did the Boolean, I did the beveling round just to make those corners nice and smooth relative to our reference. Just took my time to do that. And then I did a beveling pass after I've done the boolean. I did a beveling pass of my screen, which I need to do the voiceover, which I'm very annoyed about. Well, again, a lot of that's simple. It's just choosing different areas, because different areas will have different levels of boolean. Because this back here looks a bit softer, and the screen at the front looks a bit sharper. So it's two different materials. Which again, I'll try and do my best to comment on that in the video. Right, so what's left to do? I'm going to leave this spout thing at the back for a while. I'm going to concentrate on my screen. I'm going to do all these things on the screen I can do very easily. So what's on the screen? We've got these little things. There's 5 of these little squares. Let's make them. Let's make one of them. Who are you? You go away. So I'm just going to make a cube. I'm just going to... Now, let's have a look at these. These look slightly wider. They're not perfectly square, so they're slightly wider. And then in, down, just trying to make basic shapes. Take away the back face. I do not need that. Maybe they're a bit something like that. And then I'm going to move them into place. So just using the V snap. Actually, I should probably put the pivot point at the bottom of it first. So D and V, pivot point at the bottom. V snap that into so it sits flush with this. And I can just rotate that into place. Make sure it's sitting flush. So again, I might need to move it around a bit more. Find a nice vertex to align it to. There we go. Move it up. Down. Now what I'm going to do is just duplicate 5 of these, but I'm going to do this a special way. I don't care about the size just yet. So what I want to do is maintain the same distance between each one of these. I don't want to have like varying distances. So I've got my first initial one there. I'm going to, instead of pressing Control D, I'm going to press Shift D. Now Shift D is a duplicate with special. And all it's saying is it duplicates with a new kind of function. And the function for this is I'll duplicate it, move it, and then when I press duplicate again, Shift D duplicate, it'll copy my movement again. So if I Shift D, duplicate it, move it down to about there, Shift D, Shift D, Shift D, Shift D. So as long as I don't touch anything or move anything, I can duplicate that movement very, very fast. And I can just combine these together. Make sure my pivot point's at the bottom. And I can just use a scale to scale these in. And again, I can make some adjustments as I see fit. Looking at the distance between like the top part and the bottom part, and then looking at my distances there. There you go. And then I'm just going to hit them all with a bevel. Simple bevel again, because this is a piece of metal. A bit smaller than that. Yeah, let's give it a... No, let's keep... I'm going to keep this as a 1. So no divisions in there. That looks okay. And again, I might come back and change this up later on. But for now, that's looking cool. So, what's from next here? The switch. This little flipper switch. So what is it? It's a cube, and then it's a hexagon, and then it's a cylinder, and then it's another cylinder. Okay, cool. Now I can actually make these all inside one piece of geometry, or all out of one piece of geometry. Which is what I'm going to do, because we've done this kind of thing before. Because it basically goes from a 4-sided shape to a 6-sided shape to a whatever-sided shape this cylinder in the middle is. But the switch itself I'll make as a separate model because it moves. Or it could move. So, let's bring in a cube. Again, let's just set the pivot point. Let's snap it to the surface. Because I'm going to build on the surface when I do this. I'm not going to build off the surface and like guesstimate stuff. I'm going to use the surface. I'm going to use what I've got here to get my scale right. Again, I'm looking at the distance between like the top of this, bottom of this, bottom of this. It looks like it's just north of the middle. It's a lot thinner than mine as well. And I am going to take away the back face because I don't need that. And then what do I need? Okay, so I need bevels, because this isn't obviously a flat surface. We've got very round edges here, and then not so rounder edges here. So I'm going to do the outside corners first. Oop, oop. There we go. So get those outside corners. Bevel. That's too big, obviously, so let's go for 3. That's still too big, 2.5. That's getting there, 2.4. Yeah, let's add 3 segments. Looking good. Yep, cool. Then I'm going to grab the faces going all the way around. Now, because this whole like face is an N-gon now, so I've got to go around and select each one of these edges individually because it doesn't do the quick selection because it's an N-gon. But I should just be able to hit that with the bevel. Now, I think that's actually perfect as it is. Maybe a smidge smaller. Smidge smaller. Oops, it is. Like that. Cool. So now we've got that, and then we've got the obviously we've got the screws, but then we've got the hexagon in the middle. So I'm gonna make that a cylinder. So I like what I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna boolean any of this together. I'm gonna make separate pieces, but I'm gonna rebridge this together to make it all one solid object. But yeah, I'm gonna make cylinder, and how many sides is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I want to make my 6-sided shape. And once again, I just want to set my pivot point to the bottom of the object. And then snap it into place. Now we can think back to how we actually placed this pipe at perfectly the back of our surface here. So what I can do is do that poke face on this. If I grab that face, I can go to edit mesh poke. So then all I'm using this for is just to get that center point in there so that I can snap this into place. There you go. So make sure I've actually getting the right diameter, the right kind of orientation. So the flat sides are facing the broad side, and the point sides are facing the short side. Something like that. Cool. Now I'm just gonna get rid of all that back face there because I don't actually need that anymore. So currently it's a hollow shape. So I'm doing some big movements here, and this is the once you get used to modeling, this is the kind of stuff you do all the time. It's like these big, what I call making the journey. You do these big movements because you're understanding the shapes and how they flow into each other. Or just kind of like trying not to worry too much and just be like, right, that's how I think I should do it. Therefore, I'm just going to do like a quick thing. If I mess up and I need to redo it, that's fine because the geometry we're dealing with is very simple. Okay, so right, we've got a little bit of a bevel on this. It looks like it comes in a little bit. And then bevels. Something like that. Bit of a smaller bevel. Like that. And now sticking with this shape, I'm going to just grab the center. I'm going to extrude. I'm going to offset this in. Now I'm going to use that trick I did before. I'm going to use the smooth tool to multiply the amount of edges. So I'm going to hit smooth. And then circularize. So now I've got a much rounder shape now. Then I'm then going to delete the middle of this. Because that shape in the middle, I don't really want this shape in the middle. For now. And then I'm going to, again, circularize this. So again, the repetition of tools is here. Now for this little disc I've got going on here, what I've got to do is look at this and think, alright, how big is this? Again, I've got N-gons right there, there, that I'm going to fix up. Similar to how I've done before, a lot of this is just the same stuff. But with this now, I'm going to just grab this and extrude it up. Maybe about there. Grab the inside faces, just kind of scale them in. Maybe grab these outside edges, scale those in. Maybe I've made this disc a bit wide. Actually, no, I think I'm okay with it. Okay. Let's step back and see what it looks like. Okay. I'm just going to look on the inside of this to see if I've got any faces from any extrusions, which I've not. Because what I want to do is basically just cap off the inside of this, so just extrude and merge center. Like that. So this is where my little switch is going to kind of come from. And again, with this, I'm just going to do a simple, quick bevel like that. Cool. And I guess I could do one for the inside, but I'm going to leave that for now. Cool. So, we've got these two pieces. If you were following me exactly, you should have this as like a big solid, a big open kind of frame, and these two pieces. So what I'm going to do is combine these two together. Because now, number one, I'm going to fix the end guns in the inside of this, and then I'm going to fix up how it connects to the outside. Again, all I'm going to be using is bridge and the multi-cut tool. So, starting off from the inside, just using the multi-cut tool, I'm going to go triangle, 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 triangle. There you go. No more end guns. And now for the outside, there's some easy ones we can start off. So we've got a nice broad side here and here, because they'll have two flat sides against each other. So I can bridge that. Bridge that. Again, don't worry about this. See that? Let's isolate this on its own so we can see it clearly. There we go. Okay, so what's left? We've got this broad side here, same thing down here, and then the corner pieces. Okay, so what I'm going to do, again, this is like, I don't expect people to kind of know how to do that or even think about doing this, is I've got a broad side in the middle here, a flat edge, and I've got a flat edge here. So what I'm going to do is bridge that. That'll give me a triangle on the inside that I can fill in. I can do the same thing over here, so flat, flat. So that's basically the middle here. And again, this is why using low numbers is very, very good. Do the same thing there, do the same thing there. Because then these small little triangles, I can just fill those in using the bridge. And what's left? Okay, we've got this. Well, this is a fun little trick we can do. I can just extrude that down and then merge the center to make a triangle. And then I can just target weld that into there. And then I can just fill those triangles in. So do the same thing at the bottom. I've got this big broad surface there, but if I bring that out, obviously I've got too many edges. But if I merge this edge to center, obviously it turns into a triangle. And I can just target weld that in. And then go through and just bridge all these together. Oh, they're not running to bridge. Boo, they're not playing, they're not. Oh no, they haven't, there you go. No, they've not bridged. So sometimes triangles can bridge, just by clicking an edge and clicking bridge, sometimes they fill in. But if they don't, sorry, I'm losing my voice. If they don't, what you can do is just select an edge, go to edit mesh, and you want to go down and find, is it in edit mesh or is it mesh? Oh, it's in mesh, sorry. Fill hole in mesh. Again, not one of our top tools, because you're not always using it, but, and you're not even doing it either. Okay, so that's not even doing it. Okay, so we'll come up against some issues. So I'm looking around. I'm not seeing any double extrusions. I'm not seeing anything. It's probably just down to the point because we've got this one vertex going to one point here. So all I'm going to do here is just do pretty much what I've just done. I'm going to grab this one edge, extrude it out, merge the center, and then target weld that into there. And do the same thing here. So what I'm doing is I'm just extruding it out, merging that edge to center, so it takes a triangle, and then that triangle I'm just merging to target weld into there. Bring it out, merge the center, target weld into there, take an edge, bring it out, merge center, target weld into there. There we go. Let's just fix everything. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. And I'm just going to hit that merge just to make sure everything is connected. Cool. So then I can look at that and think, okay, how does that look? Well, this actually looks really small in the middle, so I can just grab all these vertexes in the middle and then just, I don't want to use the x-axis, so I can just use that square and just scale it up a little bit. Because again, it's relatively simple and I'm only affecting the things in the middle. Because that just felt a little bit too small at first, but that looks better. And then I'm going to go around and harden any edges I want to harden. While I'm here. There we go. All good. Oh, soft edges on the inside, please. Then harden them. There we go. So I'm going to do a quick save on that as well. Okay, so that's not complex modeling as such. It's a little bit more complex than what we've looked at. But essentially what I've done is created the base plate from one piece of geometry. Just made sure I've got those features that needed. So the rounder edges, the slightly softer bevel going around the radius. And then I did that poke to merge a bunch of faces to the center. So that I've got a good guideline that I can kind of snap my hexagon to, which is a cylinder with 6 sides. And then from there, I made the inside piece, do the smooth and then circularize trick. And then I just filled in the edges using bridge and a little bit of kind of funkery with extrusions and then merge center and then tiger weld. A lot of the same thing doing over and over again. And again, these are kind of the really common tools. You know, you combine some of these functions together, you know, extrude, then do this, and you fix. And the last thing to do is just make the little switch. So that looks like a simple little cylinder that I'm going to give, I don't know, like 8 sides. Like that. I'm going to give it a rounded tip. So rounded cap, yes. And again, even just that, that's okay for me actually. Maybe, do I want to? Oh, I'll go for 2. I'll be generous and go for 2. So I'm going to take all the bottom faces away. I'm just going to drag that bottom edge down, so I'm actually going to decide how long this is. And the last thing I'm going to do, because in my eye, I'm seeing like a little bit of a ball joint inside here. But I don't need to make that ball joint as a full thing. So all I'm going to do is suggest it by extruding out from the bottom. Like this, making a bit of a flute. And then adding a couple of edges going around using the multicut. Or the Mesh Tools Connect. Just 2 of them. Scale does that a little bit. And then I've got essentially a ball joint. Because as this would be produced as this, like, you'd have this switch on the inside that you poke through and there'll be a ball on the inside stopping it from falling out. And now I can just put my pivot point to the middle or bottom, wherever. And then I can just move this into place. Obviously it's a lot bigger than I need it to be. I can just scale it down. And I'm not going to position this yet. I'm going to keep it nice and kind of right angle for now. Because it's going to make it easy to UV later on. But then I can position that as I want in like a positive, negative kind of way later on. So boom. Very, very cool. Let me just soften the faces of that. There you go. They're really, really fun. So that's a lot of information on the side just by moving cubes and using cubes and cylinders together to form a surface. I can make a decision if I'm going to make these as 3D or 2D. I think I'll make them 3D to be a bit kind of spicy. The last thing I'm going to do before I kind of clock off this video and have to go record the bloody voiceover is I'm going to make this shape here. Now again, deceptively easy. What is it? It's based off a cylinder. We've got a couple of things in here. We've got obviously the almost like a rubber material at the bottom, and then like the green material there. And they've got this little square bit that kind of coming out here. So this is all very, very simple to make, and we will make it right now. Again, I've got to look at this and think, okay, how dense do I need this to be? I think this has got the same diameter as the handle, or relatively the same diameter. So if I did 16 for my handle, I'm going to do 16 for this. Because they're relatively the same size. There you go. And in fact, what I can do is just bring this over to the handle and just scale it so it's like roughly the same size. There you go. So that should be okay now. And again, put my pivot point at the bottom because I want to make sure I can snap this to the surface properly. bring it up, find a nice vertex to snap to. One that's aligning to the surface, like that one there. Like rotate it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to snap this so it's vertically in line with one of these vertexes here. So again, just using the V to snap. Those V snap, dragging in the Z axis and just move my mouse to where I want it to snap to. There you go. And let's move it up a little bit. Oops, there we go. So that looks like it needs a little bit more room around it, so I can just scale it down slightly. I'm going to start this off with the plastic or the rubber at the bottom and basically just do a bunch of extrusions. So maybe it needs to be a bit smaller again. Like that. Right in there. Now I can see this is slightly fluted coming in. It's not quite as a right angle, so just going to grab the top ring of edges, bring it in slightly. And then I'm just going to face mode, paint all that front face, extrude that in to make this bit, and then extrude it out to make the green bit. Again, really paying attention to how much of a right angle that is, which is not that much of a right angle. And I can make some adjustments again, so I'm looking and see if I really got this whole shape down correctly. So all I'm doing here is just simple selections and scaling. That's all I'm doing. Okay, so for now, I'm pretty happy with that. So obviously we have got a bevel at the top, but before I do that, I want to bring out this little square section here, which looks like it's obviously coming out of the green section. So if I look at this, if I really pay attention, this green kind of cubey section doesn't come out it flush with the top here. It's got like, it sits more in like the body of this piece. So what I'm going to do is bring in an edge and decide, right, where's it going to come out of? I think it's going to come out of there. So that's the thickness. And it's literally going to come out of these two faces at the bottom. Do I need to make it wider? We'll select those four first. Extrude. And then just do a slight offset to bring it in slightly. Like that. And then extrude downwards. And then just use that flattening technique. And decide how that looks. Now I think that doesn't look quite right, so let's go back to square one. Let's grab these two instead. And do the same thing, just extrude. I'm just going to drag these down, flatten them off. That's a bit better. Now if you're thinking, well, if I select the four, if I select the group of four like this, then it's too wide, but if I just select two faces, it's too thin. Just do a little bit of multi-cutting, just do a little bit of stuff. So I'm going to make an end on it first to do this, because I'm going to, or if I can put my bevel in now. So I'm going to bevel this to make this top rounder edge. So I'm just going to bevel this with that. Looks okay. So I'm going to use the multi-cut to go basically from here, here. So I'm going to hold shift when I do this as well. So it's 50% increments. Here, and then into that corner there, and then skip 2, come over here, do, like that. And then I can send these into a corner like that for now. Because then I can extrude out of these faces instead. And this side, does that look thick enough? Okay, that looks thick enough. Now that. So you can see, just by doing a little bit of multi-cutting, I can adjust things to suit my kind of piece. Happy with? That's cool. Step back, have a look at it, see if I can see where it lines up. Now, a few minor things with this is I'm only going to I'm going to try and do a bit of beveling on this, but I don't think the bevel is going to be as nice with this because of you've got like shapes coming out of other shapes, and when you get like complex modeling like this, some of like a cube coming out of a cylinder or a sphere being taken out of a cube makes your bevels really hard because your bevels are like difficult to do because it's not got a nice surface, it's not got a nice simple surface. Because nice simple surfaces love bevels because it's easy to do. More complex surfaces hate them. So what I'm going to do is just try and do a bit of the old beveling around this. Even on the inside of this, I'll just try and do that. See if I can bevel that. See what it does. So I'm going to pull that bevel all the way up to max fraction. See what weirdness is giving me. I think, yeah, no segments is good. Okay, it's doing a little bit of weirdness on the inside of this piece here, but I'm gonna be okay with this. I'm gonna leave this as it is because I don't think that's actually gonna really break the bank for me. For now, anyway, I'm gonna deal with what I can see right now. Okay. So this I'm gonna deal with a little bit because I've got this really thin edge here, which is obviously being made by these N-gons and stuff, which are in themselves producing N-gons right there and there because of how I booleaned that. Sorry, how I beveled that. So what I'm going to do, bit of target welding. I'm just going to target weld these into each other like this, going along. Just these ones as well. I'm not going to bother going round and doing them. I'm just going to do them. So you can see there, I've lost that N-gon. 5-sided shape right there. If I do that, it's gone. Turns into a quad. Go around and follow that around. These faces are so thin that on such a small kind of piece, you don't need them to be super big. That's nice and nice. You know, if I step back and really look at it, it's not actually adjusting the shape so much that it's really breaking everything. Obviously, it looks a bit funky at the minute because I've not smoothed anything. Okay, so let's isolate this off. Let's take away these back faces because we definitely don't need them. Oops, oh, there we go. Now, advanced modeling kind of theory and thinking is I've got this face on the inside. So because I didn't give myself a gap between this rubber section here and the green section here, where I did the extrusion here, you've got some faces interacting. Now they're going to be really out of the way. It's not going to break anything. Maya's not going to freak out. It just might be a little bit funky. But generally that should be okay. So what I've got to do is, all I'm going to do here is do a little bit of experimentation to see, could I target weld some stuff to fix it up, or am I kind of stuck with this? So I'm going to do some target welding. I'm going to go, okay, well, let's target weld you to there. 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 So how does that look? See, that looks really funky there. That's breaking the geometry. I don't like that, so I'm going to pull that back. So I'm just going to leave it like that, with those 3 pieces target welded, leaving these 2 pieces there. Because the weirdness is really out of the way. I should be able to smooth this and bevel this perfectly fine now. A little bit of adjustment here. Like that. Step back, second good. Let's smooth this. Yeah, looking good. So again, kind of a bit of advanced modeling there. I'm not expecting anyone to truly kind of follow me there. If you can, awesome. If you can't, don't worry about it. Again, this is kind of like advanced modeling that is tricky to pick up. Now on this as well, I will fully admit that there might be some baking weirdness on the inside here, but again, you're not really going to be seeing that. And the last thing I'm going to do on this is really kind of minor stuff. Um, I'm going to do a bit of target welding to clean up this, so I'm kind of going into the optimization stuff now. So I've got these edges here, so I'm going to kind of chill that out. But I'm also going to make an insert here for when the lead goes in. I want to kind of suggest that there is actually a void here. So number one with target welding. So I'll go to vertex, get a target weld, and yeah, it's these edges here. They're not really doing anything on the actual cube section. So what I'm going to do is just target weld and kind of bringing these into the corner. Get them out of the way. Only around to where I'm doing them here. So I want to keep that center line in there because there's no point taking that away. But just those corner pieces, I'm just taking those away because they kind of do my treeing a little bit. And then on the inside, I'm going to grab this. I'm going to extrude it in. I'm going to straighten these edges. And then I'm going to decide how thick this piece of material is. And then I'm going to extrude up a little bit. And then just bevel. So I'm only going to bevel these bits. Like this. Again, keeping that fraction low. Maybe even, yeah, still keeping it as one segment. Why do multiple segments? And then just do the old multi-cut thing on the inside to fix these N-gons, because obviously here and here are N-gons. So in this case, all I'm going to do is bring it to center, over there. Bring it to center, over there. Bring it to center. Bring it to center. Okay. So that's some complex modeling, some interesting thinking when it comes to kind of poly modeling. Again, I don't expect anyone to be following me word for word on that piece, because a lot of that is like the crazy mind of a modeler, and how if you want to become a 3D modeler, how you've really got to be able to think, looking at something and then try and diagnose the issue that you've got, what you want to achieve, the issues that might occur, dealing with the issues that do occur that you can't necessarily avoid, and judging that can you hide that or can you do you absolutely need to fix it. Now for something like this, I'm totally happy. So again, that's a relatively easy piece, but a little bit deceptively hard. But generally, that's one of the hardest pieces we'll have to do on this. The only thing I'm going to do on this is literally just scale it out slightly. Because I'm just seeing here, I'm seeing the clearance that the cable's going to have. And this just looks a little bit like it's going to interact with this section here. So I'm just going to scale the whole thing out slightly. Like that. Maybe bring it in a touch. Like that. And then just go around and so let's do some beveling on this handle section here. So these two top sections, I'm just going to slam them with a slight bevel. This is rubber, so it's going to be a bit smoother. And then I'm going to harden some edges here. Do I want to bevel this bit here? Oh, it's out the way. I don't need to, but I could do if I want to. This section, but I wouldn't want to bevel this too much. Again, slight bevel here. But I definitely want to go through and harden these edges in the middle. So they got that nice visual crease. Like that. And last thing for me, I don't know if it's on the actual piece. No, it's not. I'm thinking this is a bit of construction. I'm thinking about how this could be made. And if this is like segmented rubber parts, I kind of want the very, very bottom to almost act like this section here. And it doesn't appear in the reference, but this is my kind of like simple addition, adding a little bit of detail. Just like that. That makes a bit more visual sense to me, where if these are all segmented sections that possibly might be, you know, as if when it's been constructed, these are all actually loose and they're kind of put together on a long piece of metal. I can imagine the very bottom one having the same shape as these. But again, that's some minor stuff. So all we've got left to do now is the battery the nozzle and the cable, and then UV in it. I think. Oh yeah, we've got like the LED. You've got the little input. You've got the carabiner, which is pretty simple to make, and yeah, the actual battery itself. But that's all pretty simple. So yeah, I'm gonna end this video now because again, this is like another 2.5 hour long video. But you can see I was taking my time through that, and a lot of it is just taking your time and doing what you feel is okay, addressing it. Is it looking okay? Have I created any end guns? Check the wireframe. I always check the wireframe. Look at your reference. Really pay attention to your reference. So that's why I was paying attention and I did a different fraction at the back to my bevel than I did at the front because this feels like a bit of a softer metal. So it's going to have a softer bevel. Where this seems like a harder metal at the front. And then we've also got the plastic section. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to bevel that as a separate shape. And kind of maintain that. So I didn't. All my beveling wasn't done at one point. I did like sections of beveling, and then any end guns I had created, I went back and fixed. So yeah, next video is just going to be, and in the class, it was going to be making the battery. We're going to be doing the coil. I'm going to be doing the spout at the end. So this as well. You can attack this if you want. You can attack any of this if you want. But what I would advise is this end piece here. Do that as a separate piece of geometry because trying to make this all knobbly kind of section out of the geometry that we've got here, it's going to be a bit hard. You have to do some funky stuff, and it might just look a little bit whack. So make this as a separate shape. Right then, so I'm going to save that. I'm going to end this video here. I'm going to go do that bloody voiceover for the missed lines. And then, yeah, I'll see you in class.